2001 was an awesome year for video games, and today I was gonna actually do a top 10, but because there was so many great games that did drop 20 years ago, I thought I'm gonna definitely attempt to do the top 25 games that was released in 2001. From shooters, platformers, RPGs, and more, this was definitely a year that truly had it all. So with that being said, let's quickly run through 25 of the hottest games released in 2001. One of the coolest rhythm games from the 90s made a return with PARAPPA 2. With new songs, sick new dance moves, and an epic story to play through, this game was definitely jamming. Now, I personally did prefer the first entry in the series that dropped on the PlayStation 1, but the sequel was definitely still a blast to play. Gamers had the chance to make some crazy money in Crazy Taxi 2, the smash hit sequel that kicked the driving, people taking Mayhem to a whole new level of fun and excitement. This was an awesome follow-up to an already great game, but hats off to the dev team that packed even more fun into this title. If you love music games, then GITAROO Man is definitely a game for you. This is a crazy and somewhat obscure PS2 game that proves music can be a weapon. Now, as someone who really loves rhythm-based games, I absolutely love this game, and one that I would definitely consider a hidden gem on the console. If you're not familiar with this one, Ico is basically a fun and interesting 3D puzzle adventure PlayStation 2 game where you need to lead a strange girl through a castle filled with interesting creatures. To me, this is a really cool game that is yet again another one that I do feel is probably considered a hidden gem on the PS2. Super Monkey Ball was a huge hit on the Nintendo GameCube and the launch of a franchise. Help the monkeys get around the level or play some crazy mini games. This definitely had it all. Now, I personally love this game, still probably my favorite from the series, especially the billiards mini game, which I still think that they should have added in the more recent release of the Super Monkey Ball that is currently available. Regarded by many as one of the very best sports games ever to be made, Virtual Tennis 2 is a tennis game that is perfect for arcade-style fun. Now, I remember countless times giving a real beating down to many people in the arcades on this game, as I used to religiously play this game on the Sega Dreamcast every day, so I definitely did become a little bit of an expert. To me, they definitely don't make tennis games like this anymore. TIMESPLITTERS was one of the best first-person shooters from the early days of the PlayStation 2. This game has time traveling, action, mayhem, and tons more. Yet again, maybe another game where I may have potentially preferred the sequel, but that doesn't negate the fact that this was the closest thing that we did get to GoldenEye 007 and Perfect Dark at the early part of the PlayStation 2 cycle. See where it all started with the original Animal Crossing game. Make a fun and cute life for yourself, all the while trying to pay back Tom Nook. Now, I can't even believe that it is nearly 20 years that this franchise actually has been around for, but for this game on the GameCube in particular, I felt it was definitely phenomenal at the time, and a game that I probably would play now. It was really that good. NBA Street is a fun, over-the-top and awesome basketball game. Hit the streets for 3-on-3 slam dunking action with the best players in the NBA. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, NBA Street Volume 2 is without doubt probably my favorite basketball games of all time, but this was still an epic game that definitely worthy of a mention. question many wanted the answer to was who was tougher, Terry or Ryu, or Chun-Li or Mei? Well, find out in this amazing crossover fighting game that pits two worlds against each other. Now, I absolutely loved this game when it first dropped, and I even would go as far to say that this game hasn't really aged all that badly, as it is still a fun pick up and play even today. Two Zelda games were released on the same day for the Game Boy Color. These are fantastic Zelda games, but they do not get the love that I do feel that they do deserve. Now, I'll be honest, in 2001, I didn't really appreciate this game as much as I do much later down the line, but on reflection, it was definitely two solid titles. Sonic, Shadow, Knuckles, and more in this fast-paced 3D action platformer. This was definitely among one of the first games that I did get for my Nintendo GameCube, and the memories of playing this awesome title is endless. Use the Pikmin to save your ship and get off the planet. This is a very charming puzzle game that would go on to be a huge hit for Nintendo. Now, I remember the first time playing this on my GameCube, I absolutely loved the concept and the idea, and since initially playing this game, I've always had a great appreciation for any Pikmin game that has followed, and definitely such a phenomenal series. If you guys haven't played the latest Pikmin game on the Nintendo Switch, I highly recommend picking it up. This time, Luigi takes center stage. Mario is missing and Luigi has to traverse the haunted mansions to save his brother and capture all of the spooky ghosts. This was another classic on the GameCube that was definitely well worth playing. Yet again, this is another game that if you do have the Nintendo Switch, I feel by all means you should be grabbing Luigi Mansion 3, as to me that is definitely a real compliment to this phenomenal series. Zone of the Enders is one of the hidden gems of 2001. This Konami action shooter lets you play as badass robots with all kinds of cool abilities. Literally can't believe how this game has been slept on over the years, even when it actually first dropped. Such a classic and a real great memory that I had playing this game back in the days. I'm still surprised that so many people I asked about this game has never actually heard of this one. There's no denying at the time, Max Payne was huge. It is a fun third-person shooter that is story-driven, and it was one of the first games to use bullet time. Now, I'll be honest, this was probably another game that I probably may have not really appreciated at the time of release, but when I did eventually purchase this game, maybe a couple of years after it was first released, I was actually really stunned at how I never actually bothered picking this game up initially. This to me was such a great and innovative game at the time when it was released, so definitely one that I do feel definitely deserves a mention, and that's the reason why I've actually placed this quite high on the list, because it is a great game. Final Fantasy X was the first game in the series to be released on the PlayStation 2. Play as Tidus as you try to save the land of Spira from sin. Now, not to really say much on this particular one, apart from the fact that this was yet again another solid entry in the amazing Final Fantasy series, one that definitely did stand out in the early days of the PlayStation 2, and one that I do have fond memories playing. I never actually got a chance to finish this game, but from what I did play, it was phenomenal. To me, there's no denying the fact that Capcom did good when they released Devil May Cry, an over-the-top action game where you play as the wisecracking badass demon hunter Dante. Now, to me, Capcom always does deliver when it comes to solid action games, and this was no different. This was definitely a real masterpiece back in 2001, and a game that definitely has lived the test of time. Silent Hill 2 is a very creepy game that takes you back to Silent Hill to meet up with your supposed dead wife. Now this is a game that definitely blew my mind when I first played it on my PS2 and goes to show that Konami really does need to reignite this franchise. The Halo series is without doubt amongst one of the best console FPS of all time, and this is where it started. Play as Master Chief as you fight the evil Covenant army. Now, an early addition to my original Xbox games, and wow, what an addition. This game was simply a masterpiece and provided countless hours of pure action and fun, and not forgetting entertainment. The long-awaited sequel had fans very excited when it was released. Play as Snake and Raiden in this story-driven third-person action and stealth game. Now, all I can say is that this game was amazing. I hold my hands up and say I wasn't really too familiar with the Metal Gear games from the early 90s on the Nintendo, but I absolutely loved the PS1 Metal Gear Solid game, and this sequel, in my eyes, was without doubt awesome. As the foul-mouthed squirrel Conker. He is woken up after a night of drinking and things are very strange as he is trying to make his way home. To this day, this is a game that I feel deserves a sequel as it was just amazing. I purchased this game on a punt without any real expectations. I really didn't know much about the game prior to buying it, and I was literally blown away by how epic and how much detail was crammed into this one game. From being funny to actually enjoyable to challenging, this game literally had everything to be considered one of the best games on the N64, even though it did kind of come on the console pretty late during the life cycle of the N64. To me, definitely a really solid N64 game and an all-time classic. To this day, Super Smash Bros. Melee is regarded as one of the best games in the series. With tons of new characters, refined gameplay, and a fun adventure mode, this is definitely an outstanding game. Putting this list together, I'm not even gonna lie, I was a little bit conflicted by the top 3, as this game was definitely sitting at the #1 position when I first wrote the article, as this is such a great game. Now, I still think that this is definitely the best Super Smash Bros. In the series, as I love the adventure mode and just everything about the game. The latest Smash on the Nintendo Switch is a great and epic game, but even if they released this game as a remastered for around £60, I personally would be all over it. It pains me to think that Shenmue 2 was pretty much the last hurrah for the Sega Dreamcast. A truly masterful display of storytelling as you explore and fight your way to the end of the story. Now, as I mentioned on the Smash Bros. Entry, the top 3 was very hard to decide on what should occupy the #1 spot. And for those who know me know exactly how much Shenmue really does mean to me as a game. Definitely one of the best games that I've ever played on the Dreamcast, and potentially in general. This definitely does sit up there with the top games that I've played ever. But part 2 was an amazing sequel and really opened up the possibilities and world in comparison to the first entry. This is such a great game, and one that I do own on the Sega Dreamcast, the Xbox One as a remastered digitally and physically, and I also do own the remastered version on the PlayStation 4, both physically and digitally. So that just goes to show how much I really do appreciate the franchise. Not many games made the jump from 2D to 3D as gracefully or successfully as the phenomenal Grand Theft Auto 3 did on the PlayStation 2 back in 2001. Now, whilst I do have my reasons or could state a case why I could easily put Shenmue 2 or Smash Bros. Melee in this position, I will have to say that GTA 3 was the game that when I did first see this game, it really did put chills down my spine. I simply couldn't even really believe what I was witnessing in a video game. I had played the previous Grand Theft Auto games prior to this game being released, but I would be lying if I was to sit here and say that I was any sort of a fan of the series. But this game in particular is the game that really made me love the Grand Theft Auto series and really appreciate any Grand Theft Auto game that followed this. The radio stations blew me away to just the overall experience of the game was just literally mind-blowing. Now, while some gamers may say that this game didn't really age that well, Grand Theft Auto 3 to me will always hold a special place in my heart as definitely one of the greatest games that I've ever really experienced that I literally could not put down. This game to me definitely brings me back to the great days of the PlayStation 2 and actually to my mind was probably the first PlayStation 2 game that I owned. Anyway peeps, that was just a very quick run through of 25 games that I feel were really hot releases of 2001. I literally can't believe how many great games did drop that year. So many classics in this list. Do let me know your thoughts about some of the games that I have mentioned because we have covered quite a lot and we did try and run through them. I was trying to keep this video at 10 minutes, but at the same time, because I really did want to dive into some of the information regarding some of the games based on my personal experience, I kind of made this video a little bit longer than I initially intended. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to smash the like button. Do hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed to the channel before. And until next video, we definitely say peace out, peeps.
Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for more cool urban gameplay videos.